Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bite Size Balance. I have a really special guest with me here today. My friend and fellow senior This Naked Mind coach, Ruby Williams, is here. Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited to talk to you because I've heard your story only once, and it was a long time ago, but I remember when I was listening to it thinking, wow, this is really... Your story is so unique in terms of the combination of challenges that you had and things that you were struggling with. And then just also your life is so interesting to me. So Ruby is now a senior This Naked Mind coach, as I said, but she has a long history in the alcohol industry, in particular in the wine industry, which is really interesting. And also did not just struggle with alcohol as an addiction or dependency, also struggled with food. So I haven't had anyone on yet, Ruby, to talk about that combination of challenges, but it presents all the time. And we have definitely talked about we get a handle on one thing. And if we don't deal with the underlying root cause for it, we just replace it with something else. And that's kind of, how we're built as humans. And so I think your story is going to be really interesting and also going to resonate with a lot of the women that are listening. So thank you so much for being here. I know it's going to be a great conversation.
So I hope my story resonates.
Oh yeah, it will resonate because you can just substitute in for any of these things that we talk about on this podcast. If we're talking about alcohol, you can substitute in food. If we're talking about food, you can substitute in social media or online shopping. It's, we have so many different things as women that we use to numb and to escape and to help us cope. And for Ruby, it was a combination of food and alcohol. For me, it was mostly alcohol, but certainly at times in my life has been food. So I know that this is going to resonate. So let's start, Ruby, just with your story, which I shouldn't say just because it's a pretty great story, but let's go back maybe to how you ended up working in the wine industry. So how did that happen? You're in California, an hour and a half or so north of San Francisco now. Is that where you've always lived?
Yeah, I was born in Sonoma County, which is, also known as wine country, right next to Napa County, which is probably the most famous wine county. Born and raised here. And my stepdad was actually a winemaker. So wine was just revered. Everybody it's so a part of this culture in Northern California and wine country, wine, alcohol, for everything. So I grew up, I could taste it. It was always on the dinner table. And I got to go and visit wineries growing up. I loved it. I thought it was so interesting to go into the barrel rooms and, but then I went to college, got a degree in, my degree was in cartography, a map maker. So there's something, I don't know. Anyway, I couldn't really find a job in that. So I started working in accounting, but when I got divorced from my husband, my son was not even one, he was 11 months old. I moved back home. So when I got married, I kind of went around to different cities, states, but I came back to Sonoma County when I got divorced, and I found a job at Corbell Winery in 2000. And I worked in several different areas. I ended up for about 8 years as the e-commerce or web store manager. So I was actually marketing and promoting the wine and champagne. I also had worked in the tasting rooms, done events. It's just it became a part of everything that I did in terms of work, friends, school events, you name it, wine was involved. But my first addiction was actually food, as you mentioned, that there's this kind of, and I'd always thought I was like a large person, always on different diets and trying to lose weight. So, in working in the wine industry, I just kept drinking. I did drink more and more and more, but I also gained weight.
Mm-hmm.
And there was kind of, I call them like accelerator events that happened in my life, where it was remember in 2007 or 8 when there was home foreclosures.
Yes.
I lost my home. My ex tried to get custody of my son. So I was dealing with lawyers, and that was stressful for me.
Mm-hmm.
As well as just a bunch of family issues came up. So like all these things happened kind of within 1 or 2 years, and I gained about 100 pounds, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept eating my emotions and stress. And my aunt had bariatric surgery, and I remember talking to her about it. And I said, I really want to lose the weight. She said that was the best thing that she ever did. So I decided that I would do it. And it seems strange to me now that I would actually cut myself to lose weight. But how it felt for me to have food addiction was, I was never full. I never, that full button, whatever trigger, just never existed for me. I was always hungry. Even if I ate so much food you can't even imagine, I was still hungry. So it felt unbearable. It felt like dread. I had sleep apnea. I was getting diabetes. I couldn't move around, depression, like all these things were hitting me. Just wasn't comfortable in my body.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the surgery. Yeah.
And when was that? What year was that, Ruby?
I had the surgery in 2011.
Okay, so I do want to talk about the surgery and everything that happened after that, but let's go back a step. What was your relationship with alcohol like? Can you just talk about what it looked like before the surgery? So I'm like trying to imagine myself in that role. I was working in an industry that had nothing to do with alcohol, and it became really problematic for me. So I can only imagine how much more prevalent and challenging it is to be in a corporate role like I was, but in the actual alcohol industry itself. So did that impact your relationship with alcohol? You said your drinking was sort of slowly growing. By the time you had that bariatric surgery, like what did it look like? And had you started questioning it, or where were you?
I remember, it's interesting you ask questioning it. I was actually just not honest with myself and not honest with the doctors. I remember them asking, do you drink alcohol every day? And I actually wouldn't tell the truth to anybody. In fact, I think I was lying to myself how much I was drinking. What it looks like is you can have, especially if you're working in the tasting rooms, there's tastings, you're drinking alcohol, maybe at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
Sometimes there might be tastings anytime throughout the day. If you're going to have a lunch with your boss or the coworkers, it's a-okay to drink wine. In fact, drink the wine. Sure. A lot of times there were tastings right before you'd leave work, or you could go down to the tasting room before work and spend a half an hour down there, drinking. So, or you could, another thing I used to do, they have these, if you've already opened a bottle, they were called corked, but you could take 6 of those home.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You could do that every day.
Yeah. So, it's almost like, if you think about it, Ruby, knowing what you and I know about alcohol, it's almost impossible not to build a dependence in that situation, given how tolerance works. And just, even if you start out and you're hardly drinking at all, even if you're only drinking where it's like, I don't even know whether there's a way to delineate this, but like part of the job, right? So the tastings and the pieces where you have to drink, surely if you're doing that for long enough, you're going to build a tolerance to that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And every birthday party, retirement, anything, we would stop work, drink.
Yeah.
And I always knew that if say I started drinking at noon, it was hard to get work done.
Right.
After that. Yeah. So it started affecting my job. You would get free cases of wine all the time. Here's a free case. You would get to work and there'd be a bottle of vodka on your desk.
Just super normalized. Like it would be very difficult, I would think too, for someone in that situation to even consider that they might have a problematic relationship with alcohol when it's everyone else is seemingly doing the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. It was normal. We were all drinking so much that it's normal. Yeah.
So before the surgery, you can see now that you were probably drinking too much or it wasn't serving you. But at the time, you just were not aware. Or,
right. I was in that not aware stage. Everybody's doing it. And also I remember at one point I tried to stop for some reason and I did okay, but it was very much white knuckling it for maybe 10 days. But then we had a tasting event. And I said, F it. I got to this is part of my job. I got to do it.
Yeah, boy, that'd be a really challenging industry to change your relationship with alcohol in. So I want to
yeah, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I want to talk about that as we keep going. Okay, so let's talk about the bariatric surgery. So that happened, and how did that go, and what happened after you had the surgery?
So there were two choices of surgeries. There's, for me anyway, at the time, as I recall, there was the sleeve and then the Roux-en-Y. And I remember very clearly, they said, if you have the Roux-en-Y surgery, you may not drink alcohol whatsoever. If you have the sleeve, you're not supposed to, and because I worked in the wine industry, I said, okay, I'm going to have the sleeve because they're giving me permission to drink alcohol. I guess that's, I heard this through a filter, right? Probably both. You're not supposed to, but anyway, so I had the sleeve, which is literally they're cutting a part of your stomach away. So your stomach is now tiny. You can only eat maybe a quarter cup of food. And for someone that was eating a lot, and that was my way to soothe, I explain it like this, Wendy, where you're cutting away a part of your body, but you haven't changed your thinking at all. Like I still wanted to soothe my emotions, numb. And that was the behavior that I was addicted to, was eating. And so it very quickly, I would say I think I didn't drink maybe that first month after the surgery, but then I said, I'll have a sip of wine. And then the next thing, I was off to the races, meaning like one sip of wine went right in, I think because my anatomy had changed, my stomach had changed. It absorbed into my bloodstream very quickly. And I felt the effects much quicker, stronger, but it went away quicker, and it went away to nothing very fast. So I would pour the second glass way before I used to. I was drinking at a much higher, frequency. And so, which then ended, a whole bottle I could drink very quickly. And it's because of the food, you can't eat a lot, but you could liquid goes through you, right? So I could still drink.
Right. So there were no restrictions on liquids, but there was restriction on solid food. Yeah,
exactly.
So, okay. So how long does it take before you start thinking maybe this isn't great? What's happening? Like, is there a moment where that happens?
It all kind of, because I really seriously thought I was a person that could take it or leave it, alcohol, like before the surgery. I think there was a point, and it has to do with my aunt. My aunt who had bariatric surgery. Within, I think, 2 years after I had my surgery, she died. And I'm at her funeral. I didn't know, but she was alcoholic, drinking alcoholically.
Well, you shared a statistic. Can you share that statistic?
Oh yeah, that 1 in 4 people will start to abuse alcohol after bariatric surgery. One in four.
That is a really significant statistic.
And it's true. And that I had a group of about 6 friends that we were keeping in touch. I think 5 out of 6 of us started drinking, abusing alcohol. Very quickly. I think that was what was so shocking, is very, very quickly. Within a year, I was probably up to 2 bottles of wine a day, very quickly.
Yeah. So through all of this, I want to make sure at some point we go back to the whole not dealing with the root cause, thought patterns, all of that. So we'll talk about that, because that seems like such an obvious place for us to go here, but let's get through the chronology and then go back to that.
Okay.
Through all of this, you're still working in the wine industry?
Yeah, I worked into the wine industry until December of 2018.
Okay.
And I actually, after my aunt's death, I started looking at my drinking. That was like a wake up call for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I am going down that path. So I tried several different times, like with Naltrexone.
Can you tell people what naltrexone is? Because a lot of people who are listening won't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's a drug that, well, I saw a YouTube, a TEDx, like it was called what was it called? I'm drawing it blank, but basically there was a TEDx that this was like the miracle drug because it blocks, you don't feel the effects of alcohol. It's a drug that you have to be prescribed by a doctor. And it's true. Like, it's so interesting. You take the pill about an hour before you have a glass of wine or alcohol, and you drink the alcohol, and you don't have any effects in your brain. It just felt like drinking a glass of water. But it gave me such nausea that I had to stop taking it. It didn't work for me, is what I wanted to say. Yeah.
And just to be clear, I mean, I say this almost every podcast episode, I'm not advocating, and neither is Ruby, we're not advocating any particular approach to any of this, including weight loss, weight management, or alcohol. But this is just Ruby's story. These are the things that she tried. And this is the path that she went on to eventually get freedom from alcohol and food. So naltrexone is one thing you tried, and that didn't work for you because of the nausea. What else?
Oh, just creating rules. Like I remember buying a half a bottle of wine and saying, that's my bottle for the night, or because I could get by the small one. I tried only drinking on the weekends, different rules, right? But nothing worked at all.
And then talk about that for a bit, because that is something that is going to resonate with people, and it's something we've talked about on this podcast before. And whenever there's a guest on the podcast who's experienced that, I always like to highlight it, because it is just part of drinking. It's this period that I call the moderation game, where we try to get back control over alcohol by making rules for ourselves that we can't keep. And it's not our fault. We can't keep it because it's such an addictive substance, and because we have these, deeply ingrained thought patterns and beliefs and behavioral patterns around drinking. And so we end up breaking the rules. And then if you're me, you end up having incredible anxiety about the fact that you can't follow the rules, and also beating yourself up over that, feeling like a complete failure. How did that impact you, that moderation period?
Right. Well, I call it like Groundhogs Day. Every day because I was in this corporate position. I never missed work or anything, but I was not feeling well. I would wake up every morning and vow, I'm not going to drink today. And I would feel that brain fog, feel horrible. Probably by noon, I started to feel better. And I was already thinking about, I'm going to drink after work. And I remember only really saying to myself, I'm going to have one glass of wine. I had a stressful day. I'm going to just have one. And I'll stop tomorrow. It was always, I'll stop tomorrow. And then I would drink until I would pass out, wake up around 2 or 3 in the morning with that, beating myself up. And I can't believe I did it again for like 10 years, every day.
Yeah. Was it for 10 years? How long did that cycle go on for you?
Well, no, more like 9. Yeah, probably.
No, but it was close. Like it was a long time.
Yeah, it was a very long time.
Yeah, because I would say, like, when I go back, it was probably about 5 years for me that I was in that cycle. The last year was the worst. The last year before I just finally took a break from alcohol was so frustrating for me. It was just constantly, it was different rules every week. It was, I just found it exhausting.
Yeah. The last year was the worst for me too. And it was because I also dislocated my knee, dislocated my jaw. So physical pain. And then it switched from wine to hard alcohol. And that's when I really scared myself. I was just scared at the amount I was drinking.
Yeah. So what your aunt passed away, and that was a bit of a wake up call for you. And then what did you finally do that got you to this place? Cause you've been alcohol free now since when?
May of 2019. So 3 years, 3 years. I'm 3 years out.
Awesome. Amazing. Congratulations.
So yeah, so I tried all these different things. So actually it was my cousin, my first cousin. So my job, so I really felt like I couldn't get alcohol free working in the wine industry. And then my job, it was a very global company, one of the largest alcohol companies in the whole world. And my position got moved to the New York, USA office. So they actually gave me severance and I had some time. And so this was December, the very end of December 2018. On January 1st, 2019, my cousin said, I'm going to try to get alcohol free. And, you want to join me? And I just was like, wait a minute, this is what I want to try. But I really thought that all I needed was 30 days and I would reset myself. I don't know where this came from. So, yeah, I read my cousin recommended Annie's book. We were a part of the HIP sobriety school with Holly Whitaker. And then I did the alcohol experiment. And what I found was I couldn't do it. I couldn't, the most I think I got when I did the alcohol experiment was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks, like 18 days. So that's when I knew, okay, I needed help. Like, yeah. So.
And so how did you get help? What did you do next?
Well, I thought about, there wasn't anything there wasn't the path or anything at that time. I actually went to Kaiser, my medical, and I thought I needed rehab was what I was thinking. I didn't know what to do. I literally didn't know about all of these other resources at the time. And yeah, I went to Kaiser. And I went and did, it wasn't inpatient, but it was a program where you went every day for 8 hours a day and had counseling and group. And that's what I did. And
yeah,
got me started. Yeah.
And so how would you describe your relationship with alcohol now?
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I really have changed my identity, and that I'm Ruby who does not drink alcohol, and it feels so good to have changed my identity, and like I just can take it or leave it. I would never want to put poison into my body. I guess I have a new relationship with my whole body, and that I want to feed it nutritious food and only drink beverages that are going to heal myself. And I just changed so much, and all the benefits,
Did you feel that? Was it small and irrelevant after you left the inpatient, whatever we're going to call that, the rehab program through Kaiser?
Yeah.
Did you feel that freedom then? Or is that something that took time and
time? Yeah. I would say I was what I did was make this my entire priority. At first I thought it was just 30 days, but then I that moderation kind of came up and I went, wait a minute, because it took me about 5 months. So I started in January, right? Before things really sunk in, I kept having day ones and it was very frustrating, but it really took on, I would say at about 3 months alcohol free was when I then was able to start looking at my food as well and start to really figure out, what do I want in my life? Like, and it just felt so good to be alcohol free. Like people even noticed, Ruby, you've lost weight, your skin looks better. Like all these things people were starting to notice. I noticed. Yeah, it was amazing.
Great. Yeah. So how do you get from someone who uses food and alcohol as a way to cope, which is what you were presumably using it? What were you using it for? I don't know if you've really told us that, but like, what did it do for you? How did food make you, I know you said you never felt full, but what did it give you, the food behavior, and what did the drinking give you? Do you know, you might not have known it then, but do you know now?
I think I do know it now. I think I always just wanted to numb all of my feelings. I didn't want to feel any negative emotions, or if it was stress, or if I was feeling sad, I thought, food would, it did soothe me. I think I have this desire to be soothed and comforted, and not feel.
Right.
I didn't, share that, my parents went through a divorce when I was 8. And then, I think from then on, I just never wanted to feel. I used food, to get through all of these difficult situations. And then at the time, parents, nowadays you try to keep kids together and stuff, but my brother went with my mom and I went with my dad. And then every year we switched schools. So every year I was a new student.
Oh, wow.
I had to deal with those kind of emotions and I just didn't want to. So I would eat.
Yeah. That's hard. That's a lot for a kid.
Yeah.
So you were using food as a way to cope and numb. It's the same thing with alcohol. Then you had the bariatric surgery. Obviously the bariatric surgery doesn't deal with that underlying cause of the eating. So how do you get to food freedom? So what work did you do? What helped you get to a place where, I know we were talking before the recording and you said, yeah, you feel like you're free from both alcohol and food now. So what did that look like for you?
Well, I first think that just getting free from alcohol was the big domino, like the one thing. I remember doing different types of diets, but I would always still drink the alcohol. And when I would drink, I would then say I was not going to eat fast food or something. If I had alcohol, I would go and get the French fries or whatever. So it was really hard to stick to any kind of food plan. Yeah. But what I did was I first eliminated sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I eat a diet that's or lifestyle, I guess I'll call it, high in protein.
Yeah.
High in good fats, and then lots of vegetables. But what I did was a lot of, now that I know what it is, but changed my beliefs around food to where I do believe food, it's not about the shiny little object of some sort of a taste. It's about nourishing the body. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of looked at a lot of the different myths that are in society. For example, that you do need breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks in between. Like I really looked at different, what about that food pyramid? There's a lot of things that just aren't true.
So you found something that works for you by sort of questioning and experimenting with different things.
Yes.
And then, so what I'm really curious about is the using it as a way to numb and escape and cope piece. So I always say as a coach, you're asking an awful lot of yourself. I think you're asking the impossible. If you're asking or you're assuming that you can let go of one coping mechanism and have nothing in the wings to replace it with. So, it's, you either replace it with something else or you learn how to cope effectively and healthily using other things. So I'm curious about that because I'm presuming you must have learned different ways of coping with life stresses.
Yes. Now I understand what you're asking. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
So I started with meditation. Mm-hmm. And I also started with a gratitude journal every single day. I realized a lot of my issues were low self-esteem, low self-worth. I didn't have any self-care in there. I started exercising. I wrote down every single day 3 things that I did well. Right. And I thought that was something that really was I still do it today. I started drinking a lot of water. I used to not drink water. I think drinking water, started focusing on my sleep. That was another thing I didn't care about, but now I make sure I have a bedtime routine, which when I was drinking every day, that definitely was way out of the way. Now I have a bedtime routine. So I always want to say, I think meditation is my superpower in life. Mm-hmm. I love having I practice meditation, yoga, all these things that I didn't do when I was drinking.
And what do you think? I'm curious about, I'm always curious about meditation because it was a piece of my, it's been a piece of my path as well in terms of just all of the changes I guess I've made in the last 5 or 6 years. I'm curious to know how you see the meditation impacting your bigger life. So the practice of meditation that you have, because it's a hard one to sell, Ruby. Like, people are not super keen on meditation. I think it scares people. I think they think it has to involve a lot of time, and that it's really hard and they're really bad at it. And, you hear all of those things. And I've talked a lot about meditation on this podcast and in other episodes, but I always like to give guests an opportunity, if they are, proponents of meditation, to kind of share what it is that they get from that meditation practice, how they think it serves them.
Okay. It's such a great question. What I think, and why people, I think, have this problem is, especially if you've been drinking, I don't think you can get to that meditative state until you have some alcohol-free time. That's my personal belief. But what I started with was, I just kind of figured it out on my own, was I call it, I made a name for it too, may exist, third eye meditation, where all I did was just constantly say third eye, or like put all of my energy here. And what's happening is when you're drinking, you're using, your lizard brain, and you're trying to really if you focus to the third eye, which, is your prefrontal cortex, you're actually moving the energy towards using your frontal cortex. So that's all I did. I just would sit there and breathe and try to find that eye. And I don't know if you can do it, but when you close your eyes, can you see that? I can see a little outline of an eye, but it takes a little bit of time. So I was always trying to get to that, see that little eye. It's kind of, I can do it. And then I read Emily Fletcher's Ziva, or what's it called? Stress Less, Accomplish More, and her Ziva technique. And that really resonated with me, because what she talks about is that we constantly are storing stress in our bodies for our whole lives, but this technique can help release that stress that's stored, and or not keep continuing to store your stress. I really resonated with that, and I wanted to, like, okay, I'm going to get rid of all this stress that's in my life for the last 50 years, because I'm 52. And so how does it feel to meditate? I think thoughts just continue to keep going. And I don't think the goal is to not think.
Right. That's so important for people to understand. I think it's not about not thinking. That's not what meditation is about. You're going to have thoughts. You're a human being. It's about getting out of judgment around them, and just noticing them and then letting them pass. So that's so great that you said that.
Yeah.
And then how does it feel? So talk to me about, because I'm so curious about this for other people. I noticed with meditation that the more I did it, and I don't mean the more the longer periods of time I sat, because I would only do it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. It's never been a big time sucker for me. It's been a short practice, but the more days I kind of got under my belt with some form of meditation, or just really directed mindfulness in my day, the more I noticed that the calm that I would feel in the sessions, I was actually feeling outside of the time I was meditating. So I was feeling other parts of my life. Have you noticed that?
Oh, exactly. You explained it so well that, and I do it for about 10 or 15 minutes too, as well. And it's, you just described it. Yeah. It affects the rest of your life. And the more, I just feel like the more you do it and the more consistent you do it. And again, even if it's only 5 minutes a day, but if you do 5 minutes a day consistently, it just, your life becomes I can handle stress now. I just don't have as much anxiety. You can handle things better. I can just take a deep breath and get kind of to that calm state pretty quickly if I want to.
Yeah, it's really amazing how it does that. And I think that that's a universal thing that I've heard from people I know who do have some form of meditation practice. I also think it's worth noting that you do it one way, or you were doing it one way and then you tried it another way. And I do it a different way. There's no right way to do it. There are a million different ways, frankly, to meditate or incorporate some form of focused mindfulness, I call it, because, people get a bit uptight about what constitutes meditation and what doesn't. So I was saying, I don't know if what I'm
Yeah. Yeah. There's guided meditations,
Yeah.
which I love too. I do
Yeah.
that.
So many different ways to do it. And I don't really care whether it fits into the category of like true meditation or not. For me, it's all about getting better and better using whatever practice feels good to you and works for you and feels realistic for you to do most days. Just getting better and better at focusing in on what's happening around you. And I love the fact that I always call it the anchor, like whatever the tool is that you're focusing on in the session that brings you back when you do have, those thoughts and you notice them, the thing you come back to. For you, it's this which, and I know what you're talking about. If you close your eyes, you'll sometimes see I'll see a light or a shape or something. So for Ruby, it's an eye. And, for me, it might not be an eye, but I have sometimes focused on that when I've been meditating and and that's the thing that I'll come back to. It might be your breath. That's a really common anchor. And of course you're always breathing. So that one's always available to you. Sometimes I'll focus on my heart beating or my pulse, or, it might be music that I'm listening to, or a nature soundtrack or a guided meditation. I mean, there are just so many ways to do this. The point is you can't really do it wrong unless you're judging yourself through it, being really hard on yourself. It's all about taking some time for yourself and over time training your brain to get better at being in the moment that it's actually in. And that takes time. And you got to find the approach that works for you. So I love that was one of your tools. And I also love that you talked about gratitude, because that's something else. I mean, the people who listen to this podcast are sick of me talking about gratitude, but it's always great when someone else comes in and says gratitude's great. So what do you notice?
Life-changing, those three things, like gratitude, it's life-changing.
It really is. That's kind of my holy trifecta too. When I talk about what I did that really honestly changed almost everything in my life, it was leaving alcohol behind, gratitude practice, and regular meditation and mindfulness. The holy trifecta. The things I resisted all three of those things for a very, very long time, by the way. I was anti-gratitude. I thought it was stupid, which is terrible now. I think, oh, how judgy was that? I didn't even investigate that or research it. I just wrote it off as kind of a silly practice. And meditation, I had done what everybody does. I had tried it a few times and my mind was racing and it felt frustrating to me because I was, my brain was so noisy. And so I kind of wrote that off too, just decided that wasn't for me. And then of course, with the drinking, it never crossed my mind that I would ever not drink. So, it was always how can I keep this thing in my life? So it's so interesting to me that those three things really, there was so much resistance to them. And now they've become the key for me. And it sounds like they were for you too. And that's just making me think about, this equation, Ruby, of pain plus resistance equals suffering. And, if you could have pain and no suffering, if there's no resistance, right? The resistance is what creates the suffering, and we're totally equipped to handle pain, but suffering sucks. And so I'm always looking for the resistance points in my life or in my clients' lives. And for me, it's so interesting that I resisted those three things that were actually the key to eliminating the suffering for me, right? The key to that freedom for me, those three tools. Okay. So now I want to know, now I'm curious, how do we get from this place where you feel okay, I'm starting to deal with my thoughts, my beliefs around things, and start changing things and get some freedom around food and freedom around alcohol? How do you get from there to deciding to start this whole new career as a certified coach? What happened there for you?
Another really good question. Oh my gosh. So I loved Annie's book. It was the catalyst and the alcohol experiment.
So just so everyone knows, we're talking about This Naked Mind by Annie Grace and the Alcohol Experiment, which is a book that Annie wrote as well, but also a free program that you can always do online. It's a 30-day alcohol-free experiment. I've talked about it before on this podcast, but there always are new people listening. So I just want to let people know that's what we're talking about. And so you had read This Naked Mind and you had done the alcohol experiment.
Yeah. And I was on her email list.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, so that first year of getting alcohol free, I was really digging into, especially with my career, but just who I was as a person. Who am I? What do I want in my life?
Mm-hmm.
What is my purpose? I took those 3 questions and I took about 6 months. I started diving into every like self-help book, quit lit, I was doing everything I could to figure out, what do I want in my life? I felt like I was at this crossroads where I could actually make some changes in my career, make some changes in everything in my life. And yeah, she put out that email, about the coaching. And I seriously got all, like, my whole body was like vibrating. And I had like, I knew this was something about it. I knew this was what I was supposed to do. And so I applied, and yeah, and the rest is, I didn't know anything about it, but I was so excited to do this, to help people. What I decided was my purpose was, I really want to help other women get free from alcohol. I don't want anyone to be suffering like I was.
Mm-hmm.
And this approach works. So, and I really love what I do. I have so much passion for it. I've been helping women, and I love this. So yes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so obvious from your enthusiasm, how much you love this. And I think it's really cool because, I talk a lot about post-alcohol transformations for women and how often I see them, and it's usually with my clients, but then every once in a while I have a guest and it's also their story. So just what is possible for women, especially women in midlife, Ruby, that's kind of my niche. So women in midlife who are feeling like, I'm just not where I want to be, and there's something missing here, and who are drinking and then achieve that freedom from alcohol. It's amazing to me what those women go on to do with their lives and the transformation that's possible when we like put down the bottle. And this is such a great example of that. Can I ask you, in working with women, do you often get women who have been through bariatric surgery and are struggling with alcohol after, in the same way that you do? Yeah.
Yes, I've helped women.
Yeah.
There seems to be, when I look at kind of the different clients I've had, like there's some sort of, I called it an accelerator event, something in their life that usually, I don't know whether it's a death or a divorce, or it seems like there's something that kind of, they were maybe drinking, could take it or leave it, and then something happens. And for me, it was the surgery. But sorry, I already lost train. What was
the question? Was that, the question was just if you find that you have women coming to you for support around the alcohol who have also gone through the bariatric surgery and had that same experience around the, it being an accelerating event. So you did answer it, because I think, that is definitely a great example of an accelerating event. And I mean, I see the same thing in my practice a lot, and my accelerating event is there too, but it's not the same as yours. I think everyone, not everyone, but a lot of women there'll be like a steady growth like you had, right? And maybe even a period where objectively someone else might look at it and say, ooh, that's not so great, but we don't notice it yet. But then there's something often that happens. And, for me, it was really, interestingly, it was leaving law, which was the root cause of my burnout, leaving law to be home with my kids. It's not that my kids drove me to drink at all. It's that I never filled that hole. I left law and I, wanted to be home with my kids, and I went back to school and I got certified as a coach and I started a coaching business, but I was not paying attention to my needs and what I really needed. And there were just a lot of things missing during that time that, and it was nobody's responsibility except mine to, notice that they weren't there. I just didn't notice. And I just started, without a lot of conscious thought, I think I just started like numbing the feelings that were associated with that need, right, with alcohol. And it just sort of grew over time. And then the real accelerator event was probably my dad getting sick and me thinking, oh my gosh, now I'm in the sandwich, like this caretaking role that felt like maybe I was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, oh goodness, this is going to be another hard, now we're getting in for another hard patch. So I think we can all point to those accelerants. In the past.
I also think for me, I was a single mom since my son was 11 months old, and it was just like survival. I also say that's part of my story. Like I literally was just trying to survive.
Yeah.
as a single mom with all the stress, it was just like alcohol was the one thing that I thought from society, from growing up, from everything, that alcohol was going to relieve the stress.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just creeps up on you, and it's
Yeah.
nobody's fault.
No.
It's really not.
And it's such a common story. And it's just as simple as that for a lot of women. Like if it's your coping mechanism of choice,
Yep.
Life feels really tough. You're really stressed out. You're trying to do all the things and it just creeps up on you. And then at some point there's some moment where you look at it and you think, this isn't okay. And then you start trying to moderate and that doesn't go great. And that eventually leaves you to thinking like, okay, well, this isn't working. So maybe I need to try something different.
Yeah.
And, I've said this also many times on the podcast, there are so many different ways to do this. And I love that your story includes a rehab through a benefits provider that was helpful for you. And for some people, it involves, AA or an inpatient rehab or whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is that at the end of it all, you feel like you have some freedom and you deal with those underlying beliefs that are keeping you stuck in that habit, whether that habit's food or that habit's alcohol. And so that's the part that I think Ruby and I are so passionate about. It's about helping people, no matter how you got to this place where you want to change your relationship with alcohol, or maybe you have already changed it, but you're not feeling free, helping people find that freedom where they've made those coping mechanisms so small and irrelevant that they're not running the show anymore. You feel like you're back. Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, Ruby. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story so openly and honestly today. Is there anything that you would want, if there's someone listening out there who's got a similar story to you, who's feeling like, oh yes, I feel this around the food, I feel this around the alcohol, maybe also someone out there who's had the bariatric surgery or is considering the surgery. I mean, we're obviously not giving recommendations to anyone here, but what's something that you learned from all of this that you'd want to share?
I would like to share that I wish that I wouldn't have waited till it got really bad. Like I wish you don't, in the society, kind of, we wait for this like rock bottom, some people. And I wish that I didn't wait so long, that I would have actually got help sooner and found my people. And once I found this community of people that are going through the same thing that I'm going through, it just made me not feel alone. I felt so alone. And I really think that having like a coach to help or a community, it helps with the shame too. And then I would want to say the biggest thing that has improved is my relationships. Going alcohol free. That's what I'm really proud of, is that I have a really great relationship with my son. He's proud of me. I have better relationships with my siblings and my parents and friends. That's where I'm at right now. And I'm able to really effectively go through and figure out how to deal with my traumas, my PTSD. I was able to get therapy. I just don't think that was very effective when I was drinking, And then here's a fun fact. My grandpa just turned 103.
Wow.
And I'm 52.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to live, if I live as old as him, a whole second lifetime.
Oh, that's cool.
A whole second lifetime.
Oh my gosh. I love that perspective, because that is not the way my brain works around age. I'm always like, oh my gosh, I'm way past the halfway mark, but that's such a great thing to be able to.
And and I'm alcohol free. I did that whole first half. It's not a midlife crisis. I'm now I get this whole second lifetime to be alcohol free. What kind of life do I get to have?
I love that, Ruby. Yeah. That is so great. And I love that you chose the relationships as the thing to focus on there in terms of the benefits of being alcohol free, because that's one area, I'm sure you hear this too, where people are really worried that it's going to go the other way, and that choosing to not drink is actually going to have a negative effect on relationships, because alcohol is such a key part of, for us socially in so many situations. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ruby, if people want to find out more about you, where can they go find you?
Great question. Well, my coaching business is called Freedom Renegade Coaching. And so freedomrenegadecoaching.com. You could, well, that's the best place. Sorry.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. So if you want to find out more about Ruby and her coaching, you can go to the show notes and I'll put the link to Ruby's website there. Thank you again, Ruby, for coming on today. It's been a delight, as I knew it would be. And I will see you soon. Thanks everyone for listening.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a certified naked mind coach, I help busy women like you find freedom from alcohol. If you're starting to question your relationship with alcohol, you'll want to listen to my free 3-part video series where I address the top 3 myths around why you think you need to drink. Sign up now at www.wendymccallum.com/myths. That's www.wendymccallum.com/myths.